Hey folks, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. First of all, thanks for all the new subscribers. Over 13,000 subscribers, guys. Really appreciate that. Really encourages me to keep working. I haven't been doing as many videos as I was doing in the past because I'm really doing an extra effort here to finish my upcoming book, Bugging Out and Relocating. It's it seems I've said that several times, but I'm very close to finishing it finally, and I'm just excited. And whenever I'm excited about that, what I'm working on, what I'm writing, whenever I think, oh, guys are gonna be loving this stuff, or whenever I finish something that I think you folks are gonna be really enjoying it. That's always good. It usually means that I'm doing a good job, and based on previous experience, when I do something that I feel you folks are gonna be liking it, in general, you do. So that's good. When is it gonna be out? 2 more weeks. Let's just put it that way. Hopefully it's gonna be wrapped up in a couple more days, and after I finish a few details, in maybe a week or two, you'll be able to buy it in Amazon. On the meantime, of course, there's still my book, The Modern Survival Manual: Surviving the Economic Collapse, which is the link below. Basic economic collapse survival manual and urban survival manual in general, which those of you who have bought it do like it, and the reviews in Amazon are also pretty positive. What I wanted to do in this video is, I was just writing in this upcoming book, I was writing about this very common idea of hordes pouring out of cities when disaster strikes. And it seems to be an extremely common myth that has it has just become accepted. Someone came up with it. Others kind of liked the idea of it and kept repeating this stuff. And right now it's kind of a commonly accepted idea that whenever there's a disaster, masses and hordes of violent looters, mass murderers will be spreading out of the cities, destroying everything in their path, and cities are of course going to be burning because for some reason that's going to be happening. First of all, why would anyone leave a city when there's really no reason for that is beyond my understanding. I just cannot comprehend that. It's not just that I just cannot comprehend. I've actually done my homework, and if you do your research, you realize that this thing that's supposed to happen has never happened before, and it's not happening right now. And you know what? It's never going to be happening. A city does not burn for no reason whatsoever. It especially does not burn because of an economic collapse. Actually, if you study history, it's actually kind of the other way around. When there's an economic crisis, this isn't just Argentina. I'm not talking about my experience in Argentina only. If you look at US, if you look at Europe, if you look at every other country in the world, whenever there's an economic crisis, in general what happens is the following. And I'm trying to save you guys a little bit of time. In general, during very bad economic times and crises, what happens is that people leave smaller towns and move to the cities. Why? Because there's more jobs there. It's just basic common sense. That's why you end up seeing many of these ghost towns, some of the smaller communities that were barely doing kind of okay before a serious crisis. After a crisis, these small communities have, in most cases, have a much of a harder time. Sometimes they become ghost towns and they really struggle, while people amass in the larger cities looking for work. This idea of hordes of looters and God knows what spreading out of large cities really has no basis in reality. Why would first of all, you have to understand that you just don't leave a city for no reason whatsoever. Something has to actually be forcing you out of it. All right, an economic collapse is not something that is going to be forcing people out of the cities. Cities are not going to be burning because of an economic collapse. You may be seeing rioting, you may be seeing looting for a certain period of time. It's not the end of the world as some people may want you to think. And since we're talking about that, why would some people want you to think that cities would burn during an economic collapse, during a disaster? Fear sells, and it especially sells. It not only sells, fear sells. In some cases, people have a vested interest in making you do certain things. If I convince you of cities being overrun by monsters, looters, zombies, and burning whenever the slightest thing happens, and that the only safe place for you to live is this and that city, and I also happen to have a real estate business to sell you land or property in those cities, then you kind of connect the dots and realize what's happening. But you just have to learn from history. Do your research. I do mine. I don't take these videos lightly. I don't take my writing lightly. I do tons of research, and I think that at this point I've gained a reputation, at least within the. At least for the people that have been following me for some time, not only here in YouTube, but also going a few years back in my website, themodernsurvivalist.com, and before that, it's still going on right now, is surviving in Argentina as well. I do my research and take all this very seriously. If you look at some even some of the most awful things that have happened in history, and I'm talking about famines where millions of people got killed, got massacred. You just didn't see it happening either. So why is it that when millions of people got killed in genocides, you just didn't see cities being overrun and burning down? You do have violence, and you do have certain violent incidents throughout history, but it's not because of nothing. In general, first of all, you will have violent incidents for some reason. Something very bad has to happen, and you need something to actually force people out of their homes. You need to have something that forces people out of the cities. Cities will not burn down on their own, and people are gonna be, for no apparent reason, Joe Average becoming a mass murderer, spreading and massacring and burning everything in his path. If you look at not only history, if you look at current, ongoing right now events, refugees in general are not mass murderers. Refugees are people caught in very bad situations that are looking for safety, and they are normal people caught in crappy times. If you look at millions of refugees right now, from refugees from Syria, millions of them, they're just normal folks caught in very bad circumstances looking for safety. And you may have some violent incidents, of course, especially in refugee camps. Very struggling, stressful times, and order may not all be there, so you may be seeing more violent things. But in general, it's just people trying to get along as well as they can. And it's also important to notice the reactions are not all the same. In general, you have to keep in mind how were things before the disaster itself took place. If you look at this, for example, if you look at Katrina, not all areas reacted the same way. In places where there was already socioeconomic problems, in high crime areas, those were the places where you saw more violence. In safer communities where people, even with important amount of population density as well, but safer communities, they just organized better and things were much safer. high crime areas, you would be seeing more of that. Of course, if there's logistic nightmares like the Superdome thing, where just bad calls being made, you would be seeing more problems, of course. But it just makes no sense to think that everyone everywhere is going to be all of a sudden becoming a mass murdering potential rapist overnight. It is true, though, that when people become desperate, they do desperate things. If you have large masses of people that don't have access to water, to food, you're going to be seeing very ugly reactions in actually very little time. Now, if basic humanitarian aid is in place within reasonable amounts of time, don't expect everyone to become a mass murderer, rapist, criminal, and just destroy everything in their path. You have so many examples of this, folks. In the Philippines, how people reacted. Again, some violent incidents in general, but in general, people just try to make the best of it and try to get by as best as they could. Of course, this is the modern survivalist channel. We're talking here about preparedness and being as ready as possible for these kind of things. But you have to understand that not everything is going to be ending up in widespread mass murdering, arson in every city. It's just, it's childish, or it's, or maybe there's something else, maybe some economic interest vested in that as well. But as I was saying in the beginning, it's something that has become spread across the survival preparedness community, and people accept that as a fact. It's going to be happening because they heard someone else say it. And apparently very few people actually bothered doing what I'm saying here, bothered checking, okay, how do people really react when things go south, when things go wrong? If I look, for example, at in the case of Argentina during the economic collapse in 2001 over there, which is something I can relate to because I was there, I saw it and wrote a lot about that. You saw quite a bit of civil unrest. You saw quite a bit of protests on the streets, rioting, looting, and such. About 30 people killed in a few days across the entire country. As tragic as that is, it is not a huge number, 30 people. In general, if you stayed put, things were okay. No one was burning the entire sections of the city down, all right? And it's just one of those things that you see time and again. Cities are going to be burning. Why? for crying out loud, why would entire cities be burning to the ground? And even then, it didn't happen. And Buenos Aires is a 20 million population city. It's a huge city. Huge. If you look at Buenos Aires and Gran Buenos Aires with the surrounding suburbs and cities around it, 20 million people, one of the largest cities, including the metropolitan area and other suburbs, one of the largest cities in the planet. And it's not as if it was that much of a safe place to begin with. Buenos Aires always was a bit of a, crime was always a bit of an issue. Wasn't as bad as it became after the economic collapse, but it was always kind of, not the safest place. And still, with a full-blown economic collapse, it did not burn to the ground as some of these people out there will try to make you believe. It just didn't happen. So the more you study these kind of events, or even worse events, another common thing I've come across is that, well, but it wasn't as bad as it's gonna be here in U.S., man, because we're U.S. #1, so we're gonna be worse than you. All right, if thinking that you're gonna be always ending up worse than everyone else, and that makes you feel better for some twisted reason, whatever floats your boat, I think it's more realistic to calmly analyze how things happen. If Buenos Aires didn't burn down after a full-blown economic collapse with the president leaving in a chopper and leaving everyone looking up without any savings, and you saw some crime, you saw some violence, but it wasn't the end of the world, and the city didn't burn down, and you didn't see hordes, these so-called hordes or golden hordes or whatever, spreading and destroying the. If it didn't happen, and it didn't happen in dozens of other similar or somewhat similar events, or even worse events of, awful massacres of people and famine and genocides, then you're not gonna be seeing it, at least not to a large scale in any case, in US either. So this fantasy that some people have about major cities all burning to the ground, it's not gonna be happening. You also have to look at other places. It's whenever someone tries to simplify things that much, it's just a display of ignorance or negligent misconceptions or trying to trick people into believing things. People don't react the same way all the time to all things. It was actually pretty recently, again in Argentina, when there was, like, for several days, police across the entire country went on strike, pretty much saying this. I don't know if you saw the video about it. I did a video about it just a few months ago. It started in the city of Córdoba, the second largest city of Argentina. The police officers went on strike in that city. They said, we're not going to be moving a finger. Do whatever you want. Criminals started doing whatever they wanted. Thousands of stores being looted. That happened in other police departments across the country. Basically, most of the cops in Argentina went on strike and didn't do anything to stop the anarchy ongoing. Imagine for a second if police officers in your country go on national TV and say, do whatever you want, we're not going to be doing anything. Loot, kill, do whatever you want, we're not going to be doing anything until we get more money. It was pretty bad. I mean, thousands of stores being looted and people sometimes showing their worst. But it was like, 15 people getting killed, 20, let's suppose it was 30 unofficially speaking, or it wasn't really that bad. And you know what, for the most of it, it was looters being shot by community, by people, by good folks that organized within their communities, sometimes heavily populated areas. People organized, did their best to defend their cities, their towns, their neighborhoods, and actually doing a pretty decent job. I don't see why that cannot happen in US as well. And in no time, people realize, if you come to my neighborhood looking to make trouble, you get shot, so you better not do it. Happened in Argentina? Yes, we could say that Argentina is people are a bit more tough or a little bit more resilient because they have already gone through a pretty bad thing with the economic collapse in 2001, so a little bit more resilient, you could say, but it could happen in other places. Also, if you look at the different incidents, let's say, for example, England. During the riots in London, several days of rioting in London, lots of buildings being burned down, rioting, looting and such. It was under control, and as it usually is, again, learning from actual events. It was under control in a few days. It was bad for some time, but if you stayed put, as bad as that was, as maybe hundreds of people taking advantage of that unrest to commit crimes and such, just a few months later, during the floodings, people still in large population centers, because of the floods, people volunteering and helping one another by the thousands, helping each other, and you saw people at their best. Queensland, I think in Australia, lots of flooding, lots of problems, and people, instead of taking that advantage of that so as to commit more crimes, they just helped one another. People in general are not all mass murderers and rapists and arsonists. People in general are just normal folks. Even in Argentina, in the same place where you saw, in the same cities like La Plata. La Plata is the capital of Buenos Aires. A very large city, millions of people living in one small area. In La Plata, where you still saw looting and rioting in several occasions, especially during the economic collapse. At the same time, during the floods, very bad floods because of very poor infrastructure, linked all this to economic collapse, awful infrastructure, no preparedness whatsoever for the floods that came when they came, and a lot of people actually died because of that people were at their best, helping one another, doing the best they could. Floods, I'm also thinking of floods in Santa Fe, also a province in Argentina, very, very bad. The stories you got from people, of course, there were some incidents, violent incidents and crime, but the most common story you got was, we saw the best of people. We saw people helping one another, doing their best. So it's not all the same, and this idea of hordes and such, just spreading out of the cities and destroying everything, very unrealistic. Just never happened. It's not happening right now. Not likely to happen. And again, oh, but here it's gonna be so much worse. You sometimes see people say, yeah, but you know what? When this or that city spends 4 or 5 days without power during a blackout, it's gonna be burning to the ground. And you see, sometimes it's guys writing fiction, and if it's fiction, it's okay. You can just, works of fiction, you can say whatever it is what you want. But people bring out stuff from fiction and say, okay, a city, millions of people, a week without power, it's gonna be complete madness. Buenos Aires went without power for a week. No one saw the city burning to the ground, actually. It was awful, of course, but you didn't see the city burning to the ground or even anything close to that. Maybe if you think of New York, if I'm thinking New York, 1 week without power, are you gonna be seeing quite a bit of problems, especially in the more poor or some of the more violent neighborhoods and such? Of course you're going to be seeing that, no doubt whatsoever. But again, it is places with high crime areas where you're going to be seeing people take advantage of this. That doesn't mean that the entire city is going to be burning to the ground. That doesn't mean you're going to be hordes of looters spreading over the whatnot. Guys, just want to share that with you. Folks, thanks for the subscriptions. If you like the video, thumbs up and share it. Take care, have a great day. See you on our next video.